when the Athenians introduced this radical new form of government, at almost the same time, they instituted the performances of tragedies at their great civic festivals. So in an important way, drama and democracy grew up together. And from our perspective, when we look back on democracy, it seems to me that it would be useful to look back on it through the eyes of what the theater can offer. Now, the next question might be, well, okay, why do Suppliant Women? It's not a well-known play. Well, the play tells a very important story, not only for the ancient Greeks, but also for ourselves. That is, for a start, how can a group of dispossessed people, in this case women who have to supplicate powerful figures for help, how can their voice be heard? They ask very, very difficult questions. They ask the society to entertain a war on their behalf, to help them recover the bodies of their dead sons. What constitutes a just war? We might think of the situation in Sarajevo, or of the mothers of the disappeared in Central and South America. Clearly the issues that the Suppliant Women raise in 5th century Athens are very, very germane to our own situation now. Now, when we try to approach the play, of course, we're trying to make a translation between an ancient culture and our own, an ancient theatrical form and our own, an ancient view of democracy and our own. And I think what we tried to do is to maintain a tension between these two views, not to give a kind of museum reproduction of a Greek tragedy, but also not to turn it into a modern play, to keep the tension so that the audience can learn something from what the Greeks had to offer as they think about the problems in their own world. And so we have tried to give a production where attention is maintained and the audience is, in a sense, left with the problems of the play, just as I believe would have happened when Euripides did his play in the 5th century.
My eyes swollen, sluiced with tears, flesh shredded and bleeding.
Okay, good.
Blood, wounds, death, press. Beaten with grief.
It's not a beautiful kind of pain that they're in. The reality is that the women have trudged 100 miles to supplicate themselves. There's a wonderful Goya painting of, Saturn devouring one of his children. And anybody that knows Goya, I think, will know this. It's Saturn ripping apart a body. Now, not that these women do this in the play, but the really grotesque gesture that this painting, that Saturn is doing in this painting is evocative of the kind of tension that we're trying to work to get the chorus to do.
The women are on stage the entire time. I mean, the play takes the title from the chorus. So Suppliant Women, in a sense, provide the emotional ballast for the play. In the original Greek theater, they would have kept most of the time in the orchestra. In fact, they are found at the orchestra at the beginning of the play. So one of our challenges was also to figure out how we could get a kind of modern version of an orchestra. So we decided that what we would do is construct a dish, a kind of floating dish that would act as our orchestra, but then invert the relationship of the audience to the orchestra. That is, to build bleacher seats on the stage in this big auditorium and build out this dish so it's sort of floating in the house where the audience normally would sit. Now, this inversion does a couple of things. First of all, it gives you a terrific sense of scale because the audience is looking down on this dish as the Greek audience would have looked down on the orchestra, but also out on this expanse of theater, sort of like the Greek audience would have looked out on the expanse of their city. Behind the dish, we have we'll have a T platform area where a lot of the male actors will perform. So we have a kind of female space and a male space, although they're transgressed at certain times. And then behind this T, we're going to put a scrim where we'll show projections, which will help to flesh out some of the poetry and associations and the language of the chorus.
Urn of ash, urn of tears, their strong flesh and blood. The city's body, a small heap of ash.
it will sing in a beautiful way, but it will sing with meaning. You defied the gods. The young men, they wanted war. You were all courage. No second thought. Yes!
Wise then to leave of his own free will.
But his brother usurped his power in his absence.
And you went to Thebes
To right that wrong. And lost.
You want advice? Or something more?
More. Theseus. Rescue.
There are all sorts of conventions of acting Greek drama that are very, very challenging for modern actors. One of the most interesting one is stickamythia, which is an exchange of one-lines, where one character says one line and then the other character says another line, a kind of question and answer or debate that happens very, very quickly, almost like a kind of contrapuntal music.
But subtext is, it's not about Adrastus, it's Athenians. I mean, what does Adrastus say? Look at me and learn. I mean, that is to say, I am here as a moral for what, one, you shouldn't do, but also how you should treat people who have erred in that way, which is not to kick them out, but to understand. But so anyway, the long and short of it is, I do think
Suppliant Women does not have the spaciousness and time to develop a character.
In a Greek play, you need to hit point A and then hit point C, and they need to be extreme. The audience, even though you need to make a point B for yourself, the audience doesn't see that. The audience is not really interested in seeing that. What we need to do is tell the story, and it's in primary colors, so that there's not a whole lot of pastel in there.
You can add to that difficulty, for example, of two characters, Iphis and Evadne, that appear only for a few minutes on stage, are not mentioned before they come on or after they leave, and yet hit extraordinary pitch of emotion to the point of suicide and complete desolation. How do you get grounded enough as a performer to give that kind of a performance, to come on and blaze like white heat and then leave an lasting impact on the audience?
What way, what act of the mind?
Heroic and final.
What are you saying? Why these riddles?
I shall leap over the Padius fire.
No! You must not say that to me.
But I want all who can hear to learn.
I will not allow it.
You cannot reach me. My body falls. Women, what horror?
I think first and foremost, the passions of the Greek material are so extreme and immediate that there's very little time often to prepare in a normal way. What it really needs is a trained body, I believe. A body that is available to such greatness of passion at a moment's notice. Terrific discipline and terrific stillness and explosive energy, almost coexisting at the same moment.
So I can do the sounds tonight?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I also want to talk with her about her hair. Yeah, good. And whatever jewelry, so.
excellent. And then go naked.
Okay.
Actually, the fabric we have look very ghostly and gorgeous.
Okay, I bought 12 yards of something for the shrouds.
Right, so.
You didn't wait for me!
I'm sorry.
Come look at it and like it.
What world do these characters belong to? What kind of clothing do they wear? We decided to try for a classical Greek look without being historically accurate at all. So, for example, the color palette we're choosing is drawn from one of the black figure painters, the Amasis painter. Very attractive black, orange, clay color orange, and slightly dark red, purple color. And the dish of the orchestra is colored kind of terracotta, looking something like baked earth, which fits all sorts of themes of the play, but also, of course, seems to look like a kind of Greek vase. Now, the characters are draped in costumes that look Greek, but in fact, the drapery, the designer John Wilson chose the drapery motifs from various African forms of draping. So it's a kind of a heterogeneous design look, although it has a kind of ancient feel to it. We chose to mask the chorus following the ancient Greek custom of masking all the performers, but we've only masked the chorus because they're being played by women much younger than they are supposed to be, if you will, which fits one of the functions of wearing masks, which is to, in a sense, to hide the actor a little bit from the actual role that he or she is playing, but not to mask the main actors. We're working in a relatively close area, so the need to project a visual image far into the distance, which would have been a requirement in the Greek stage, doesn't apply to us here. So we've decided to keep a kind of tension between, again, modern conventions and our design choices and the ancient conventions that we're drawing from.
Glorious Victor, Lord of Athens, Theseus, we come to you and your city as suppliants.
What is it? What do you want?
You know of the army I led and lost.
You hardly marched through Greece in silence.
I destroyed my men, the finest of Argos.
Such are the wages.
We also decided to complement the language of the play and the visuals of costume and lighting with a variety of images, computer-generated, some of them altered, fading in and out, all sorts of complicated patterns designed to complement the language and images primarily of the chorus.
This one I'm not sure if we need or not.
Then if we don't need to know where
It's pretty weird. The problem is there are all these little Clinton signs throughout the crowd.
Which you can get rid of everything with this bloody machine.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's worth ditzing, you know.
Maybe we'll look 100.
One of the culminating ways that we've used these projections is at the final scene of the play, which is the appearance of Athena, the goddess of war and the goddess of Athens, as a deus ex machina. This is a convention in Greek tragedy where a god would appear from on high and, in some sense, redirect the focus of the play. We chose to have a series of slides of a statue of Athena, which was actually the actress playing Athena in costume, painted in bronze, and then superimpose on those still slides a film of the actress as Athena speaking. So the idea is that this still image, we've seen a whole lot of them through the play, suddenly comes to life, surprising us, I think, in much the same way that the appearance of a god on high would surprise the audience in a Greek tragedy.
Camera ready?
Camera ready.
Sound ready?
Ready.
Okay, roll sound.
Hold back for now. Wait till your beards have grown. Then raise the army of Argos once again against the seven-headed gates of Thebes. Nursed as lion cubs, you will prove bitter to them, destroyers of their cities.
The city will be drawn to consent, for I gave the people, for I set the people up as monarchs of themselves, freeing the city from tyranny by giving them equal votes. Taking Adrastus and these boys as witnesses, I will go before the citizens.
Good. When he says taking Adrastus and these boys as witnesses, can you take another step forward?
The music, of course, is directly related to what we do with the chorus and grew out of rehearsals with the choreographer and the chorus members. Very percussive, very powerful, in some senses very modern. Not at all what you might expect in a Greek tragedy.
One more time. I want to put some. One more time. I like that thing.
Yeah, me too.
504.
32285.
Thank you.
I can get them later. I just want to make sure they were down there.
Yeah, that's good. What will you?
That stays open, and we're on the edge here. Actually, we'll need to come over here just a little bit. Rotate the whole thing over. You got it. Okay, and shut it in. Square.
One of the most interesting things in the play for me is the way in which women are represented. We have, of course, the suppliant women as a kind of core of the play, but their grief and anguish affects another woman, Aethra, the mother of Theseus, to the point that she bursts out of her self-accepted silence and makes a political speech encouraging Theseus, her son, to take up the suppliant women's cause.
And yet I see your point. When I beat Theseus, I fled from danger. My deeds have spread our glory throughout Greece. Athens, always the avenger of wrong. So you were right. How could I shun this labor? What would my enemies say if you, who gave me birth and cared for me, were first to bid me take up the challenge? And so I will. I will go to Thebe again. If I can by words, if not by the spear.
Child, for this I carried you in my womb,
Labored in Herculean pain.
Now, death takes his cut.
The fruit of my pains at birth.
Aged, infertile, alone. Once I begot a son.
The other night we were sitting in the theater and we heard the voice part of Athena for the first time. And I suddenly got this image of an induction center in the military. And at the end of this play, of course, the boys, the sons, take over. And the country's basically ready to go to war. Then Athena's voice comes on, and I haven't seen the film part yet, but I can just imagine here's this general that emerges, and it's a woman.
Hello? Okay, you ready?
Rachel? Okay, now, Michael D'Augusto. What I'd like to do then is go back to get us at the end of image Q5, just before image Q6. Okay, great. Right, as things stand now, a wise woman works most wisely through a man. Go image Q7. Old women, help us. And I just called it Q8. And that's it's a dead slide.
This is the dead projector, right?
Exactly, but it's, it's the image you like. That's absolutely perfect.
And then we're going on in sequence.
Good, Michael.
What does a woman do once she has her voice? There's a kind of frightening prospect then. We can't just work to have our opinion and our voice and not do something with it. So in a sense, I feel that Aethra is very life-sustaining in that she gets her voice, and once she gets her voice, you know she's got that and she's going to use it, and she does. Evadne goes through some pain with losing the loss of her husband and the situation with the war and all of the grieving. And she gets her voice, and what does she do with it?
betray the dead. Sunlight and marriage. Farewell.
I think that she's there to show the audience the costs of war on the survivors, and the inability of some people after a war to ever escape its consequences, even though they've lived through them. For some people, war is so appalling and the consequences so devastating that all they can do is join in that death. They can't resurrect themselves from it. What are democracies' responsibilities to other people that aren't in their city? Do they have any?
Athens acknowledges the pains of others and boasts in you a young, noble shepherd.
Theseus represents, at least for the ancient Greeks, a kind of the closest to perfection that democratic rule could achieve. In the play, for example, he opens up the discourse of politics to women. He listens to his mother and changes his mind about a policy decision. He is moved by the suppliant women. He decides to go to war on their behalf and recover the bodies of the dead, because that's a central civilizing act. Without burial, what is there for human beings? That the dead deserve that right. And he even participates in the burial rites for these dead warriors by washing the corpses. So Theseus seems to represent the best that a democracy can hope for, and yet he himself finds at the end of the play that he too is trapped in a kind of cycle of violence and a cycle of history. Because when Athena appears, the goddess of his city, and urges on a future war, it's as if all that Theseus has fought for has been undermined, as if history is doomed to return to a cycle of violence instead of a cycle of rebirth by giving the dead their burial. And I think that this is Euripides' point in a way, that violence and history seem to be twinned, and it's very hard to break out from their energy and their force. And yet even the most powerful and well-meaning democrat is potentially going to be caught in this cycle.
Old woman, I fall at your knees. Our voice rough with age. Set our children free!
And yet, on the other hand, I think Euripides believed, at least in some sense, in the possibility of democracy, the possibility that human beings could choose to break out of that cycle. And so at the end of the play, the challenge, not easy to resolve, is left with the audience. Can we make a world better than the world that we have seen before us?